The world's most honored watch is Longines.
Longines watches have won 10 World's Fair grand prizes, 28 gold medals, and more honors for accuracy than any other timepiece. Longines, the world's most honored watch, is made and guaranteed by the Longines Whitnall Watch Company.
It's time for the Longines Chronoscope, a television journal of the important issues of the hour, brought to you every Monday, Wednesday, and Friday. A presentation of the Longines Whitnall Watch Company, maker of Longines, the world's most honored watch, and Whitnall, distinguished companion to the world-honored Longines.
Good evening. This is Frank Knight. May I introduce our co-editors for this edition of the Longines Chronoscope? Mr. William Bradford Huey, editor of the American Mercury, and Mr. Donald I. Rogers, an editor of the New York Herald Tribune. Our distinguished guest for this evening is General John S. Wood, former Chief of Mission of the International Refugee Organization. The opinions expressed are necessarily those of the speakers.
General Wood, a great many GIs will remember you as the courageous commander of the 4th Armored Division, which swept across France and into Europe during World War II. Since then, we understand you've been with the International Refugee Organization in Austria and have watched our foreign policy work at close range, firsthand. I wonder, could you tell us, as a close observer, is our Marshall Plan and our foreign policy being administered wisely in Europe?
Well, sir, I can't, of course, speak as an expert because I've been in Europe too long. But I have been close to it for 5 years, to all the developments in Austria and formerly in Germany.
Well, do you believe that we ended the Marshall Plan program too soon? Did we cease the economies, the civilian economies on the countries?
I think the Marshall Plan funds made possible a tremendous improvement in the European economy.
Did we stop it too soon?
And that the standard of living improved. I think the changeover to the direct or more direct military expenditures and the lessening of the increase of prices due to the Korean War, and also perhaps the lessening of the funds spent has created difficulties among the population of Europe.
Don't you feel, sir, that the creation of military expenses in Europe by the United States was necessary?
I think it is. I think any steps taken to improve our defenses are necessary. I think that we perhaps are a little more frantic and frenzied in our apprehensions about Russia than we need to be. I don't think the Russians are going to make a direct military move in West Europe. I never have thought so all the time I've been there.
Then why are we building an army there?
I think the purpose of our building defenses in Europe is to bolster their strength and to hearten them and to increase their spirit of resistance, and it may be that those things are useful.
General Wood, you of course are aware of the fact you've been out of the country a long time, but this is an election year, and it's a particularly important election year to our people, and our listeners are sort of searching their souls to see whether we have spent too much now or whether we are overreaching ourselves as a nation. Now, in your opinion, sir, we as a nation can take some pride and satisfaction in our Marshall Plan expenditures. You've said that that's been a proper thing and that our nation can be proud of those expenditures.
We can be proud of it, certainly.
And that we have, by and large, gotten some value received for it.
I'm sure we have.
Now, you are making a difference between that and our present military expenditures. Now, in general, do you think that perhaps this year we are trying to spend more than we should in Europe on military affairs?
I believe that we could take a much calmer view of the whole situation and a longer range view and put the economic basis of opposition to Russia before the military.
I see. Now, in your view, you're saying that we can take a longer view, so that means that you don't think that war is imminent.
I don't think war is imminent, and I have not thought so for 5 years.
You think that it's the Russian plan to try to weaken us economically rather than to attack us
That's
any
my
time?
belief, and that it's a very long-range plan, and that we must plan accordingly.
That's
and
right.
expect
If that's the Russian plan,
over a period of years, and it may be 10, 20, who knows?
We have, since that's the Russian plan, is to attack us economically, make us weak, then our first consideration, in your view, should be to protect ourselves from that, from economic derangement at home.
I feel that we must keep ourselves strong, and by that I mean economically and to keep our morale high.
Well, I gather from what you say, General, that you believe Russia is winning her campaign against us. If she is weakening us economically.
I don't know. You know more about what is being done to us economically than I do. I haven't been here very long.
Well, you just paid your taxes a
But
little while ago.
taxes and the general feelings that I sense of apprehension and doubt and confusion here lead me to believe that Russia may be succeeding. And actually, Russia has succeeded in taking a large part of the population of the world without losing a man.
Do you believe that the people of Europe are as necessary to us militarily as we have led them to believe?
I think we should change our emphasis and from enlightened self-interest to sort of an inquiring self-interest. And I don't believe that the people of Europe are in the long run essential to the existence of the United States.
We can get along without them, in your view.
I think we should do everything we could to bolster them, to strengthen them, and within our possibilities. I don't believe, finally, that the security of the United States rests anywhere but in our own hands.
General, you, of course, sir, have a reputation as a great fighting soldier, both with our own armies, and I believe you went to the Col de Guerre. You also know something about the fighting abilities of other nations, having fought 2 wars in Europe. I'm sure that our audience would like some quick evaluations from you as to what you think we're getting for our dollar in the form of fighting armies. Now, do you think that the French, for instance, are in a mood to fight now and that we can create a fighting force in France?
I think the French are admirable soldiers. I've seen them in battle. I've seen them in time of war making the greatest of sacrifices. I believe that that their pride lies in their nation, and I am quite doubtful about the value of the army that's being created on a basis merely of formulas and in a European sense.
You mean a united European army?
I don't believe it has any great value now.
What about the Germans? Do you think that our efforts to invite the Germans to join an international force might be successful?
I think the Germans are great soldiers. I don't believe that the Germans either are going to be willing to fight for a divided Germany.
You think that then that our efforts to create an international fighting force in Europe might not be as successful as we had hoped?
I think the steps that we are taking may be successful in time, but I think it'll be a very long-range thing. It may take generations.
In the meantime, you would spend the money for something else.
I would spend the money where it would strengthen us most.
Well, now, so we've had on our show, we've had a number of Americans who have said that we must plan for at least a 15-year period of making our nation strong, in which a large proportion of our national expenditures must go to arms. Now, is it your view that we should take a long-range view and should make our own nation strong, and most of our money should be spent on our own armaments?
In my view, we must rely on ourselves finally for our security. If we take a calmer view of the whole thing, if we can watch our own expenditures and find out how much we can afford, then, in my opinion, we must gauge our efforts to that.
Economically, can we just cut ourselves off from the rest of the world?
Well, I don't think so, but, I mean, if we can avoid it, no. But in my opinion, in the long run, we can exist no matter...
If we have to.
No matter who has any particular island.
General, I'm sure that our audience would like to have your view on this. If worst should come to worst, and if our nation in this generation should have to fight the Russian power complex, do you believe that we as a nation still have the strength to build a fighting army that could deal successfully with the Russians?
I do. We dealt with the Germans when they had all of Europe. We dealt with the Japanese when they had all of the Pacific.
Well, General, I'm sure that our audience has understood your message tonight, and that is that you think that our emphasis should be on making our own nation strong militarily. Thank you very much for being with us tonight, sir.
Thanks, sir.
The editorial board for this edition of the Longines Chronoscope was Mr. William Bradford Huey and Mr. Donald I. Rogers. Our distinguished guest was General John S. Wood, former Chief of Mission of the International Refugee Organization.